Day 2 of our video game freaking adventure. So just a quick recap about last night before we get started is we started off with some RC Pro-Am on the NES. Those of you unfamiliar with RC Pro-Am, even some retro gamers, they may not necessarily know about it. It's kind of like what it sounds like, remote control cars on this racetrack, and it's cool because you race against 3 other cars. That's the computer. You get to pick up some upgrades along the way, but there's also some hazards, like depending on the board, you might have oil slicks or little rain puddles that might slow you down. And as an added bonus, some of the power-ups you can get are missiles or bombs that you can either drop on a car behind you so that doesn't pass you, or shoot a car that's ahead of you if you want to take its place. And like most racing games, you want to be able to qualify to make it to the next track. So in the case of RC Pro-Am, you need to finish the race in 3rd place or better. That was pretty much our warm-up game. Basically, I let this guy go first for a little bit as I was preparing other stuff. It's not a real 2-player game. It really only has a 1-player mode, but we found our own way to make it co-op. Just kind of taking turns, you know. He played a few rounds, I played a few rounds. You're allowed a certain number of continues before you got to start over again. I know he really appreciated when I took over because he was having trouble getting past to level 7, which is tough passing level 6. But because I still had a lot of muscle memory, as it's my game, I was able to push us past. How far did we get? 10, 11?
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. So we had a lot of fun with that. Tell us what you think about that with RC Pro-Am.
It's a fun game to play for the NES. That brought back memories of being on at other friends' places, playing that for hours on end. At that time, I had pretty good chops with it. I remember getting all the way up to like level 22.
Yep.
And I was like, and I thought level 22 was hard. Revisiting this now, I had some muscle memory, but like after track 6 and 7, it starts to get really hard, really intense. There's even some surprises of like this wall that pops up.
Oh yeah, that wall.
Which can either help you or hurt you.
Right.
There's no in between.
No in between. Either it nails you and then like you're last place again, or maybe it hits a car that was like catching up with you if you're lucky. Yeah, the other thing too, forgot to mention, is that besides grabbing these little power-ups to upgrade your car to make it faster, there's letters out there in each track. And if you build up the letters that spell Nintendo, then everybody gets upgraded to the next kind of vehicle. So you start off with an RC, kind of like a off-roading truck, and then you go on to like, kind of like, I don't want to say Pinewood Derby, but like kind of like a Pinewood Derby style car, and then finally you're into like a full like Formula 51 kind of race car.
Yeah, I think it's like a Formula 1 or
Formula
NASCAR type, if I can remember. It's been a while since we've played that. But
definitely a lot of fun. From there, we moved on to one of my all-time favorite games, Super Mario Bros. 3. To me, as far as being a Mario fan goes, not to say that the other games that came out there weren't great, because they are, most of them were fantastic, but there's something very special here for me, with Super Mario Bros. 3. It's just like the right combination of old-school Mario that you love, playability, enhanced player experience, and some different and unique power-ups. The fact that you can make Mario fly from time to time was already like a big deal.
And pretty funny.
And pretty funny. This character and I, now that one is closer to a real co-op in that the players take turns. Now the original Super Mario Brothers game, everyone's been through this, especially if you grew up in a house with an older brother who played Nintendo better than you. He would be player 1, and then you'd be sitting there twiddling your thumbs for about 35 minutes waiting for him to die. You haven't started your first board yet, he's already on world 6-3. But with this, it's like, alright, I start off as Mario, I play the first board. If I die or if I clear that first board, it's his turn. And then so on from there. Basically, you're both working towards the same goal. Getting to the end of that world, getting to that airship, defeating the boss of that level, and then moving on. So it's one of the things I really like about it too.
Yeah. Super Mario 3, I have some nostalgia with it. It was more of my brother and my sister's favorite Mario game because they were more into that specifically. Super Mario 3. I remember my brother for hours on end playing that because he got a better hang and a better gist of it. To me, the first Super Mario Brothers to me was more memorable because I was able to learn and watch from him, and especially like Joey said, instead of being like switching on and off, you would have to wait till player 1 dies before player 2 starts. If you know the secret of where you get the infinite men, player 1, like Joey said, you can last for hours on end and you're just sitting there going, oh god, can I go now, please? You know? So it took a while.
Just to add something to his point, no exaggeration. One time, went over to my friend's house, staying over. He had a Nintendo. I was only lucky enough to have an Atari 2600 at the time. He had an NES when it first came out. Watch this guy's face and say the name. So that friend's name, Kevin, as in my friend Kevin from Ellenville. Yeah. He was like, I'm going to be Mario. I'm going first. He goes on first. We started at like 6 p.m., like right after supper. It was like 9 o'clock before I got my first turn.
Oh my God.
He made it all the way. He died on 8-4, which, for those who know, it's the very last board in the freaking game. He like got 3/4 through, almost broke the controller in frustration. I was like, dude, you got all the way there one man. What are you about? And I'm sitting there like, dun 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 dun, dun world 1-1. Oh, here goes a Goomba. Better step on it. Meanwhile, he's over there freaking fighting the real Bowser. You know, I'm sure sooner or later Kevin will see this video. I love you, man, but that was like a dick move.
Yeah.
He should have let me go first. You know I was going to die within the first few boards anyway. Jeez.
Wow. 3 hours, huh?
Yeah, like about 3 hours. Because he didn't even warp. He didn't even do me the honor of warping and just getting there. He had to freaking play every single board, get every freaking coin, every power-up, taking his time. I'm sitting there just like, yeah, sucks to be me. Anyway, from there, we moved over to the world of PlayStation 3 to play a game that's definitely older than even the PlayStation 1. We played the remade version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time. As a matter of fact, the subtitle is Reshelled, because basically they went in and programmed it specifically to run on whatever the new platforms were at the time. In this case, PlayStation 3 was the current console. We played that a couple hours, and I was Raphael, because he's always my favorite turtle. This man here was Michelangelo.
Yeah, it was Michelangelo, which Mike was always my favorite guy in there because of his humor. And I mean, all 4 turtles are fun because they love dealing with pizza or whatever, but Mikey always had that slanted sense of humor like I have. That's what drew me to him. And the game was very fun. It was very entertaining. It was done really well for the PlayStation 3, how they reshelled it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a really fun game to play and watch. I have no arguments on it.
What I especially like about that game too, there's a nice balance between a variety of like new characters and enemies, and then classic ones that you're familiar with if you were a fan of the original show, which I was. I have memories of just like Sunday morning, whatever time it was, I made sure I was at that TV early because I wanted to catch Teenage Mutant Turtles. It was just a coincidence I tuned in on the first day they were airing the pilot episode. Basically, the first part of a 5-part thing where they meet Shredder and Baxter, who's the first boss battle in this game. Is Baxter, the Fly Baxter. From a nostalgic point of view of video games, nostalgic for the cartoon, comic book fan. I mean, it's a great experience, well done. Controls are pretty intuitive for the most part. We played enough with continuous everything, get all the way to the end to defeat the Shredder.
Yeah. As I was saying to Joe yesterday while we were playing, my brother always talks about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. In fact, he can impersonate Krang and Shredder's conversation about getting a new body.
Yes.
So I was teasing Joey yesterday going, Shredder, where's my new body? I'll be ready in a minute, Krang. You promised that we would defeat the Turtles.
Yep.
As soon as Joe was showing us that we were going to play that game, this has just been very recent, and my brother's been doing that impersonation a lot. Just makes me crack up and think about it more.
And then he was doing that, and then as a joke, having a little bit of meta knowledge about the actors and the voice actors, I was like, Shredder, you sound a lot like Will Smith's uncle.
Yeah. Oh my God. But yeah, it was definitely really fun. It was really cool.
That was kind of it. We didn't really touch on anything else, did we? Because we kind of engorged ourselves in those 3 titles, which is fine. I mean, that's the cool thing, is that we didn't have a real specific format. The only thing I had specifically planned for the evening is that we had to touch Ninja Turtles, because that's a great co-op, because you're on the screen at the same time, helping each other out. I tell you, there's something very satisfying for me being Raphael and showing some size into those foot soldiers.
Yeah.
Let me tell you.
There were some funny parts with the foot soldiers where in the game, when you're fighting them, they're riding on these hoverboards.
Yes.
And you see some either falling off or they lose their balance and they're like clinging on for dear life.
Yep.
It was kind of pretty comical.
The other thing too is with some of the boss battles, seeing some that you recognize from the cartoon, not just the Shredder. My 2 favorites that are not Shredder and Krang, because they were both pretty awesome anyway. Two secondary villains that were bosses. One was Metalhead, which was that mechanical turtle that Krang and Shredder had made to go after the turtles. And he was kind of mopping the floor with us a little bit, but then we ended up getting him, of course. And the other one for me was Leatherhead, the alligator. Because I just kept thinking about him in the cartoon saying, yeah, I guarantee you don't get these turtles. With that heavy Cajun accent, it was freaking great. Unfortunately, he doesn't speak in the game. He was pretty tough, though, actually. He was a pretty tough boss.
Yeah. And there were a couple moments when Joey fought Krang the second time, right before Shredder, where Krang throws like the bubble zapper.
Oh.
And if you get in the bubble, you're like floating up there. And it's pretty comical when you're sitting there floating in this bubble, like...
That reminds me, so when you're on a board, now, as you're fighting along a level, because you get like a couple of lives each, and if you eat up those lives, you have the option to continue, you hit your X, and you're back in the game again. Except during a boss battle. If you're in the middle of a boss battle, and one of the players runs out of lives, he can't tap back in until either the game is over because the remaining players lose, or you beat the boss and you're starting the next stage. As he was pointing out, basically you fight Krang twice. First you fight him in that big bodysuit that he has, a robotic suit where he's in the stomach there. That one we beat him together. Then on the next stage when we went and fought Krang, basically it's the brain thing inside that little like platform thing that he floated around on when he didn't have a body. He ended up dying because we got to the board, he was on his last man anyway. He died, wasn't able to continue, sits there just saying waiting, he's waiting for me. So I had to finish off Krang by myself, and yes, I kept getting caught up in that bubble, and it was such a close match, I thought I was going to lose to him. So every time he got in the bubble, I was like, no, get me out of here! Which probably added to the laughter, seeing the turtle in there like, all rough, like, yeah. It was like a little kid in the crib, like, let me out. So.
We should also touch on the cutscene where they're going through time.
Yes.
And Raphael's smile in there.
Yes. When you complete a stage, so basically what happens is you have like the first two stages are right in whatever city that is that they live in. Gabriel O'Neill's reporting and they're out there. So you fight. So after like, I think it's the second stage, the Shredder casts some kind of like ninja mystical spell to transport you back in time. That's his way of trying to get rid of you. In between stages, like at one point you're fighting medieval times, another point you're on a pirate ship, another point you're in the future. So at the end of the stage, when they're ready to put you in the next stage in a different time period, they have this gigantic warp going, and the turtles are being sucked into it. Very reminiscent of the Evil Dead movies and Army of Darkness, when Ash is being transported back in time. Very reminiscent of that. And here's like Raphael's clawing like, oh man, you know? And Michelangelo's all like this. He's got this big eating grin on his face like, yeah, this is tubular.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty classic.
Yeah, it was pretty humorous, and I got a kick out of that.
So yeah, great action and comedy like you expect when you were watching the original Ninja Turtle cartoons.
That's, I hope, what video games do. Video games tug on those emotions, whether it's memories or fun times, entertainment, and I can definitely say that this game fills all those voids.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the reasons why I put such a concentration on retro games for us, because I mean we can play new games and have fun too, absolutely. But there's something magical about, to me, there's a sweet point in game console history with the games where there's the right balance of advanced graphics and technology, but still that simplistic, fun, nostalginess that may not come forth as well as it would for like the newer like Halo games and stuff. Those games are fun in their own way as well, and they have their own traits that make them special. But because this is so tied to when we were growing up, I really like, there's a certain kind of joy that you can only get from something that's from when you were growing up. It takes you back to a time when you were not an adult.
Right.
But arguably we're still not adults, but physically we are, maybe not up here.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, I'll speak for myself.
Just
And you.
Yeah.
That's it for our recap. We hope you enjoy. We're going to start off with a fun game that I didn't tell this guy what it was, but it's downloaded and waiting for us on the PlayStation 3. We're going to hit that and take a break, and then we're going to hit another game. We'll see you then.
Definitely.
All right? Laters.